Emma. Thank you so much for talking with us today. Carolyn Hines for Here's What Happened and Carolyn Talks podcast. So I really love sci-fi. I'm a huge sci-fi nerd. And one of the things I've always loved about sci-fi is how writers and directors and cast are able to intertwine a lot of stories, a lot of deep stories into the element of sci-fi. And I find for Moonhaven, to me, one of the main themes is there's grief, of course, but then there's also forgiveness and healing and identity with motherhood and parenthood. So I want you to talk a bit about Bella's relationship, because I kind of see her as an intermediary between Io and Earth, and she acts almost like a surrogate mediator for all of them, because she herself doesn't have a connection with either Earth or Io intrinsically. So talk a bit about that character development and how all that ties into the story of Moonhaven.
Yeah, she does. She likes to say that she stands apart. She's not alone, but she likes to stand apart from things. She's a bit of a watcher. And you're right, she doesn't have a great relationship with her mother, but she does kind of yearn for that at the same time. And there's beautiful relationships as well that you see later on in the series with some of the other characters and their own mums, and the relationships they have on the moon are so different than the families that we have down here. And because of that, they see one another as family, all of them. Which strengthens every bond that you have. I think we can learn a lot from them. But yes, it's really fascinating that. And I'm a huge sci-fi nerd as well. I love the world building aspect of it. And I think what Peter Rocco, our showrunner, has done so brilliantly here is focus not only on the world, but the people. And so it's a really character-led and driven series. And you really want to find out what's happening. And like you say, you learn about the world through Bella. You see it through her eyes. She is an outsider on the moon. She comes from Earth, and she's a reluctant hero. She doesn't want to be there. So you find out about the moon, their culture and their ways through her eyes. And I think that is really fascinating. I'm so excited to see what people make of her and make of the world.
Yeah, Io is not what I thought it was going to be at all. So I can't wait to see what happens later on in the season. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Yeah, it takes you on such a journey, even reading it myself, turning through the script, and each episode, because we only got them sort of one at a time. I had no idea what was coming. And to the point where you read it and I got goose pimples in the later episodes. So I cannot wait to see what you make of those as well.
So another thing that's really interesting about Moonhaven is the concept of opposites. So I find that there's a lot of opposites in the show. Like there's soft and hard, there's up and down. There's this constant discussion of if our Earth is up and down, if the moon is above or below. And then for Emma, she's kind of like the same thing, whereas you talked about her progression as a character where she kind of like gets closer to people. So she's getting softer, but she still has to maintain her harder edges so that she can fight because she's a fighter. And then there's also the discussion of trust and doubt. All of these options. So I want you to talk a bit about going through the process of the show and filming the show and the characters of like as an actress working through these opposites, and also the training that you have to do as a fighter, but then also still be able to keep the emotionality of who Emma is, and then also who Bella is becoming as a character.
You're right. There's so much juxtaposition throughout it. And I think the main example of that is with the Earthers and the Mooners, the us and them, but trying to find sort of I suppose a place between them because they all have to exist as one. But yeah, that was fun, finding her vulnerability, but also keeping her darkness and her detachment. But finding humor in it as well for me was really important. Finding the light amongst the shade within it. As an actor, I think working with opposites and obstacles is always your friend. To be battling with something is when the most interesting work happens. And Peter provided us an absolute gift with Moonhaven as actors, because it is so character led. And fighting, sorry, I apologize. With the fighting, we had an amazing stunt team, and every time I had with them, I loved it. And I had Krav Maga was my fighting style. I'm going to sneeze again. I'm so. Whereas the fighting of the Mooners was more like water, so that everything was trying to be fluid and not trying to hit, but to try and dodge and duck and dive. So even watching Bella fight with the Mooners is a battle of opposites, and really interesting to see how they interact in that style, because they have a real physical language. They embody their words. So yeah, that's a fun example of opposites. And Belle Williams, my stunt double, was brilliant. So working and learning from her was so much fun, and seeing how I progressed as time went on. Initially, it was quite difficult to pick up moves, and I wanted to dance them, which doesn't really work for Bella. You kind of want to hold, yeah. So learning to sort of develop that and harden my movements, yeah, was fascinating. And Vic Armstrong, who was Harrison Ford's stunt double, directed some of the fights in episodes 1 and 2. The best stuntman that has ever lived. And he said that I was like a Catwoman and that I took to it like a natural. So I will hold on to that for the rest of my life. Thank you, Vic Armstrong.
The language is interesting because I wasn't expecting the Shakespearean sort of language, but then also the modern language. So I love how that also plays into the whole characters. Thank you so much, and great show. I can't wait to see how everyone reacts to it, because I personally can't wait to see what happens, because episode 4 ended on a cliffhanger, which I did not appreciate, because it was like, no, I need to know what happens next.
Yes. No, it's interesting you mentioning the language, because I love that in other sci-fis, in the genre, like the development of a whole language and building that up. And not only do they have a written and spoken language, they have a physical language that has been made. Rasheen, who was our choreographer, I think it's just stunning how they move through dance and express themselves, and how that unifies them all. But yeah, the interplay between the earther sort of American colloquialism, and then Kadeem picking up on some of that as well later on in the episodes, is just so much fun. But yeah, language is important within it.